Good morning. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to view us and help us remember Memorial Day and those military personnel that have given their lives so in defense of the country. At this time, I would like to have Post-Chaplain Robert Poletto lead us in an opening prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, today we are here to honor those that have served our country and given their lives so that we may stand here and still live in freedom. We need to be constantly reminded of our gift of freedom and those who gave all to make sure future generations continue to know life in a free and democratic society. Remembering those who have passed is only half of the task that is before us today. We must also carry their love, honor, and duty forward to the future generations. Our children must know who they were, what they did, and why they did it. To do anything else would be a disservice to their sacrifice and to their memories. Those that have gone created a clear pathway for us to continue on. We must never waver from that path of freedom and democracy. Take their memories, take their dreams, and walk forward shouldering the cause of freedom. Carry it high, carry it proud. They did, and now you must walk forward for them and for their children. Amen.
Cover. Please be seated. At this time, I would like to introduce Mayor Steve Lentz, who has a few things to say. Mayor Lentz.
Thank you, Commander Frasier, and thank you for tuning in and watching this here today. Memorial Day was started just after the Civil War in several ceremonies all over the country honoring the war dead, and today you have services similar to this going on in 17 national Civil War cemeteries throughout the country. There are 26 military cemeteries in 17 countries all over the world, and countless memorials all over the nation, such as the one we have here in Mundelein. And so we join with everybody in expressing our sentiments and honoring the war dead of our nation. But the men who we're going to honor today, who we are honoring all over the country, didn't just die for our country, as you heard in the prayer. They died for the cause of freedom. Now, freedom is we're in the midst of an experiment in world history. Throughout world history, the default form of governing was always tyranny. Monarchs, tyrants, dictators, etc. And 245 years is just a blink of an eye in the course of world history. And so this truly is an experiment that we're in the middle of, and hopefully we're not just in the middle, we're at the very beginning. We certainly hope, and certainly hopeful that we're not near the end of that. And if you think about it, there are really kind of two types of governments, two types of even politicians, one could say, those that trust people with freedom and those that don't. And we have to ask any government, do you trust the people to speak whatever they want, for the press to be able to publish whatever they want, for people to be able to assemble with whoever they want? And in many countries, the answer is that the government does not trust the people to do those things. And so we have had to fight as a nation several times against those, and on behalf of others fighting against those who would control them. You think about the wars we've had. Look at the governments representing Germany, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. all of them had governments that wanted to control people and not let them be free. These were dictators and tyrants, etc. And so freedom is fragile, and we must diligently defend it. In our own monument here in Mundelein, it's located at the end of Holly Street going east, just right where it blends in with Route 176 at that little triangle there. It was installed on May 30th, 1967 by the VFW. And at the time, the rates of deaths with the Vietnam War for the Mundelein community was higher than the national average. And so they put up this monument, and I'm going to read off the names that appear on that monument of Mundelein residents who gave their lives in the defense of freedom starting in World War I. So in World War I, Ebenezer Albrecht. World War II, Leroy Loomis, Ray Moorman, Melvin Rouse, Norman Ulrich, Francis Dischinger, Lloyd Iverson, William Masters, Fred Anderson, and James Kirk Jr. From the Korean War, Gordon Schmeider, Randall Guardian, Jesse Hernandez, and Ralph Leaf. From the Vietnam War, Ernest Straley, Vernon Stitch, Roger Leto, Jack Jones, Marvin Geis, Ronald Jensen, Edward Lama, Ronnie Landers, Jackie Reed, James Bateman, and finally, George Hayne. These names all appear on one of the four tablets or pieces of stone that they put on the monument. There are four total. These names occupy just one. And then after George Haynes' name was added, miraculously the killing stopped for those that reside in Mundelein that went to serve. And there hasn't been a name added since. Miraculously, I say it's a gift of God for the protection of those in our community. And so when you drive by that monument, when you drive up, you'll see the blank slates sitting there. And go ahead and just offer up a short prayer of thanks, because I really believe that God's miraculous hand has been protecting our community from more deaths after this. Commander Frasier, thank you for your invitation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Lentz. At this time, I would like to introduce the guest speaker today, James Kupek. Jim Kupek served in the United States Army and the Army Reserve. He is currently retired after 34 years of service. He retired as Lieutenant Colonel. During his tours of duty, he served as Comptroller and Assistant Deputy Chief, Staff of Logistics, and the Department Chief of Staff for Information Management. He designed and built the budgeting and ordering process system used by 5 separate commands throughout the United States. His awards include the Meritorious Service Medal, the Army Commendation Medal with 4 oak leaf clusters, and the Army Achievement Medal. In his civilian career, Jim worked for the First National Bank of Chicago, Bank One, and J.P. Morgan Chase banks. He was a division manager of technology, head of the loan servicing, and chief risk officer for capital markets. Jim managed the development of several corporate-wide programs, including budgeting, credit portfolio management, and collateralization loan sales. He retired from the banking business after more than 31 years as Senior Vice President and Managing Director. Jim and his wife, Sue, have lived in Mundelein for over 30 years. Their daughter, Kathy, attended Santa Maria del Popolo School and Carmel High School before going to the University of Illinois. Jim has been involved in Mundelein for many years, serving as the President of the Finance Council at Santa Maria, Public Affairs Officer of the American Legion, and as a member of the Mundelein Police Pension Board. Jim.
Good morning. First of all, I want to thank Commander Frasier and Mayor Lentz for giving me the privilege of allowing me to speak to you today. Memorial Day is a day of somber remembrance. This is good because there's something in the act of remembering that is important. It is a form of gratitude, a form of honor. And it shows that we're not just skittering around, living our lives independently in this glorious thing called freedom. It shows that we know that many people gave their lives to allow us to live as we do. And it's time to call to mind all those brave men and women who died before us. But memory is a fickle, fleeting thing. At one time in my life, I could name all 50 state capitals. Now I'm pretty lucky if I can remember Springfield. There was a day when I could calculate partial derivatives with the best. Now I don't know what a derivative is. And I cannot remember a person's name 2 minutes after I've been introduced to them. Some people I know jokingly call this sometimer's disease, because sometimes you remember and most of the time I don't. But for many of us, memory is quite often associated with physical activity or in an event that we experience. A song can recall strong memories of another time, another place. A scent from the roses in the garden can bring back episodes from ages ago. And a date on the calendar will smack us in the face and bring back past events with lightning speed. When my father died, I was devastated by the loss. Miss him terribly. But every time I pick up a socket wrench or know the difference between left and right tin snips, my father is with me. When I complain that there are no more points or distributors in the car, it's from my dad. When I hear the song Peg of My Heart, I know it's being played from my father because it was his favorite. My father is easy to recall because I can remember these many events. I knew my father, lived with him, grew up with him, and experienced all of these things with him. So my memory of him is vivid. But here we are today, trying to remember so many gallant men and women who sacrificed their lives to give us the land of the free because they were the brave. They never knew us, and worse, we never knew them. It's almost like we do not know how to remember them or what they did for us. And yet Memorial Day is supposed to be a day of remembering. It's the one day that we set aside to bring all these courageous people into view and give thanks for what they have done by remembering them. The problem is that it is hard to remember the things we did not live through. We diligently read our history books in school, and we remember our teachers telling us that history repeats itself. But can you remember the names of those instructors, much less the important events of the past they described to us? Those memories fade very quickly. Dates and places were just something to be remembered so we could pass a test. We never meant to remember them. Some may remember that Memorial Day was originally called Decoration Day. People would go to the graves of their loved ones and place a decoration. The sight of the grave and the act of placing flowers there helped people to remember. They could call to mind faces and names and places and events. They had something physical to help them. This practice did not originate in the United States. It dates back to the ancient Greeks and Romans. In Athens, public funerals for fallen soldiers were held after each battle. The remains of the fallen were placed on display for public mourning before a funeral procession took them to their internment in Keramikos, one of the city's most prestigious cemeteries. These tangible events help them to remember. You see, we have a hard time remembering things that we didn't experience. We were not there when George Washington and his soldiers crossed the Delaware River on that frigid night in 1776. We didn't hear the oars on the water or feel the spray on our faces. The icy wind must have stunned their skin and chilled them to the bone. But we didn't even experience the fear that these brave troops must have felt going against Lord Cornwallis's seasoned Hessian forces. Nor did we feel the longing they had for their families by missing Christmas with them. Almost 150 people died in that one battle. 25,000 brave soldiers and Minutemen lost their lives securing the safety of this country in the Revolutionary War. We didn't know any of them. We didn't feel what they felt or see what they saw. None of us were there at Gettysburg to hear the cannonballs whiz over our heads. We did not feel the heat of the hot July day when Major General George Meade's soldiers successfully defended Cemetery Hill from the thunderous onslaught of General Robert E. Lee in a battle that included the infamous charge of Major General George Pickett. We didn't see the smoke rolling in front of us, blinding our path. We didn't hear the deafening report of hundreds of muskets going off at once. We didn't have a friend fall at our side. An estimated 45 to 50,000 soldiers lost their lives at Gettysburg, and eventually 655,000 sacrificed themselves in the American Civil War. 449 individuals lost their lives each day of that war. And in the end, that was over 2% of our population. To put this in perspective, in today's numbers, that would be almost 7 million lives. There were none left who rode their horses into the waist-high grass of the Little Bighorn with Colonel George Armstrong Custer. None are left who were able to smell the wheat fields and feel the rush of the prairie winds, or hear the multitude of arrows flying through the air, or the shots from hundreds of Springfield carbines and Henry repeating rifles. It's difficult to quantify the number of dead in these indigenous wars, but it is safe to say that tens of thousands of soldiers, Native American braves, and civilians died in this long, painful conflict. And no one is here today who was with Colonel Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders when they charged up San Juan Hill to punish the Spanish for the sinking of the USS Maine. Of course, the Army is always saving the Navy, but that's not the point today. We didn't feel the heat of the day, hear the thunderous hoofbeats, or smell the unpleasant aroma of sweating horses. We didn't experience the utter terror of close conflict. And another 2,400 lives were lost, many from malaria and other sicknesses. They didn't ask why they were there. They just followed their duty. We can only imagine the terror that the passengers of the RMS Lusitania felt when it was sunk by the German U-boats, spurring us into World War I. 128 American civilians were killed in the 18 minutes it took for that ship to sink. The sounds of twisting metal, crumpling beneath the waves, and the icy cold water of the North Sea were just the start to the terrible evils which so many would experience in the war to end all wars. We didn't follow General John Blackjack Pershing or smell the poppies of Flanders Field with the rest of the American Expeditionary Forces. We didn't feel the damp, cold earth in the miles of trenches in which our troops were forced to seek shelter. We didn't deal with the horrors of mustard gas, and their cries to don your gas mask. Memories fade, but we lost 116,000 American lives in that one. I'm grateful to say that there are some still here who unfortunately experienced the dread that was World War II. I am proud to call many of them friends. But most of us were not on the Higgins boats and the landing crafts of Normandy. We didn't get seasickness before we jumped into the brutally cold ocean to wade ashore amidst the horrible, deadly sounds of enemy gunfire. We didn't have the chance to follow Lieutenant General George S. Old Blood and Guts Patton and hear the roar of his tanks of the 7th Army, or charge into Bastogne in the Battle of the Bulge. We didn't experience the utter depression and pain of the torturous Bataan Death March, or know the exhilaration of the Marines raising the flags on Iwo Jima. These images are slightly clearer to us, but they're not in our everyday memory. It hurts to remember the over 400,000 American deaths of World War II. I took my grandson to an American Legion meeting once, and I asked him if he knew what World War II was. He was 8, and he looked at me proudly and said, yes. Then I asked him if he'd like to meet some of the people who fought in the war. He looked at me shyly and said, no, that's all right. He had no idea what they went through. He just read it in a book. It was not a memory of his. And yet I stand in awe of those veterans. Korea, Vietnam, and kicking sand in the desert for the myriad of Middle East engagements all have their share of experiences that many will never know. We read about these wars in the newspapers and even see them on TV. Korea, 35,000. Vietnam, 58,000. The Gulf Wars, 7,000 and still counting. But most of us were not there. While we want to memorize these events and hold sacred the lives of those who sacrificed everything so that we can live in this great country, it's hard. We do not have the experiences which make it possible to remember them. We cannot seem to make them real. So what can we do? Well, this ceremony is nice. And I don't mean that in a funny or mean way. It really is great. It does help us remember, but only for one day a year. And that's not enough. Not nearly enough. We need to take advantage of this day while we are together with our loved ones to share memories, to tell stories of your uncle in Normandy when he lost his boots. Reminisce about your cousin's tour in Japan when he learned how to say sayonara. Ask the quiet guy or gal sitting in the corner what they remember about serving this country. Find out what you can before it's too late. Washington, Meade, Custer, Roosevelt, Patton, and many others are gone. World War II, Korea, and even Vietnam veterans are leaving us far too quickly. But the Desert Storm and Afghan veterans are here. Talk to all of them and remember them through their experiences. Hear what they accomplished and be proud. Thank them. But most importantly, share those stories with others, especially our young ones. Stories are far more memorable than history books. Remembering is much more than reading. We need every day to be a memorial to those who gave their lives to make us safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. At this time, Nick Konz, the Service Officer for the Post, will read the names of American Legion Post 867 members that have passed on to Post Everlasting since last year at this time. Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Commander. As Commander Frasier just stated, Mundelein American Legion Post 867 lost 7 members this year. They are now part of our post everlasting. Before I read their names, I would like to share something else with all of you. As you know, the 20th anniversary of 9/11 is coming up in a few short months. Something we don't realize is that today we have the sons and daughters of parents serving in Iraq and Afghanistan in pretty much the same places that their parents served 20 years ago, most with multiple deployments. The consequences of these ongoing wars are approximately 7,000 dead, over 50,000 wounded, many with horrific wounds, loss of limbs, loss of sight, some burned beyond recognition, thousands more suffering from PTSD. This is on top of the 20-plus suicides these people are committing every day. I ask we honor them and all who died in the service of our country. As Colonel Kupek stated, Decoration Day was declared a holiday in 1968, shortly after the Civil War, where people on both sides placed flowers on their loved ones that gave their lives during that terrible war. Probably about 60 years ago, people started calling Decoration Day Memorial Day. Now, for many of us, Memorial Day turned into a family tradition, such as barbecues, parties, and multiple sales from our local retailers calling Memorial Day mattress sale, Memorial Day furniture sale. And, well, it seems to be more important than honoring those that died in the service of our country. Well, if that's us, then shame on us. I ask that we keep all those who died or are wounded, physically and mentally, in our thoughts and prayers. As my wife and I travel across the country going through small towns and cities, we stumble upon military memorials, and we feel obligated to stop and read the names on these plaques. We feel if someone took the time to place those memorials there, we could take a few minutes out of our busy lives to stop and read the names that were put on those plaques. I found such a memorial in Davenport, Iowa, placed there by, I think, the American Legion of Iowa. And this time I would like to share it with you. It's titled, Remember Our Fallen. The warriors of the 21st century, professionals who volunteered to join the United States Armed Forces, grew up in the shadow of September 11th, 2001, a defining moment for most of them. They come from all walks of life and every corner of our country, daring to go where many never would. They retain the face of freedom and build upon the legacies of those who went before them in a cause greater than themselves. We cannot all pick up the sword, nor should we, but we owe our support and gratitude to those who do and to their families. Each fallen hero left behind a family and friends who will never forget them, and we must be there to support them. Remember their loved ones, continue to pray for them, and speak their names. Most importantly, speak their names. Relish the freedom consecrated by that last full measure of devotion and paid for on your behalf by heroes who died in a war zone while wearing our country's uniform. Stand down, young warriors. Your mission is complete. I will now read the names of deceased members from our Mundelein American Legion post that died since last Memorial Day. James P. Schutz, 7/9/20, a 14-year member. David T. Huning, 8/19/20, 48-year member. Charles B. Johnson, 9/9/20, 35-year member. Louis F. Ebert, 10/2/20, a 14-year member. Kenneth L. Parrish, 11/24/20, 43-year member. Kenneth Roy Peplow, 1/28/21, 18-year member. Larry J. Warnicki, 4/9/21, a 3-year member. Thank you. The buglers, please sound taps.
Present. Arms. Order. Arms. And before the chaplain, as our officers of closing prayer, I again want to thank the Village of Mundelein for making this opportunity available to us to hold this ceremony here, as well as thanking both the students from the Mundelein High School band. Chaplain. Uncovered.
Dear Heavenly Father, we remember today all those who have come before us and given the greatest gift to our democratic nation, as we heard today, their lives. Their duty, their honor, and their lives are precious gifts that must be given to the future of our country and all our families. The duty of our veterans, past and present, is the fiber of the word freedom, and is stronger by our recognition of their service and sacrifice today and every day of the year. We honor that service and sacrifice today and should carry it forward for our children and their children to honor. Freedom and democracy are the result of all the most honorable this country has produced. Today, we stand to remember the most honorable amongst us, and we must continue to carry the burden of their sacrifice, lest we lose sight of what true freedom is all about. Today, as we've heard today from other speakers, is for remembering. Stand in honor of them that have passed. Walk in the path of duty. Remember their cost and hold in your heart the cause of freedom. Remember today, Memorial Day, our veterans, the men and women who have paid the ultimate price. Amen.
Cover. This concludes the 2021 ceremony honored for Memorial Day. Thank you.